I do feel that with a lot of gay men, there is that, like I spoke of, that vulnerability, that shame, that fear to present yourself in such a stripped back, bare way. And in my opinion, I do think that stand-up comedy is one of the most vulnerabilizing sort of things that you can
Definitely.
do. And, you're standing up there in front of people like, I'm here. I'm telling you that I'm going to be funny and I'm going to make you laugh. It's a big thing to be so vulnerable. It's very scary.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Unapologetic podcast. My name is Pierre. I'm your host, as well as the founder of the ethical gay brand Unapologetic. And joining me today is David Ingram, a stand-up comedian. So welcome, David. Nice
Hi.
to talk to you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. Yeah, such an honor to be here.
Let's start with a quick little question. First of all, where are you from? Where do you live?
I am from It's it's not that small. It's a town just outside of Glasgow. A lot of people probably will have heard of it. It's called Paisley, and it's basically Glasgow Airport. It's literally
Oh
right
yeah,
on.
I heard of
Yeah,
this. The same as the fabric.
it's exactly the same as the fabric. Yeah. Funny you should bring that up because it is a joke that I do in my set. I'm not going to tell you what it is, but yeah, I do a bit of a joke about the fact that it's the Paisley House about it. And something about teardrop tattoos under people's eyes being the same as a Paisley pattern and it being quite a rough town. But yeah,
What inspired you to become a stand-up comedian?
God, to be honest, it was something that I always thought about doing in the back of my mind, but I never ever thought that I would be confident enough to do it. I used to be painfully shy when I was younger. I couldn't even stand up in front of people at school without going bright red. I used to get so anxious about things like that. But I was always quite good in small groups of people, like friends in the playground chatting and stuff like that. And I remember one time I was just having this kind of laugh with a couple of friends and I was holding court as I did, as I do. Friend said, "Well, you thought you should be on stage. You'd be a good stand-up comedian." I remember that so well. And I probably was only like, think it was like 12 or something like that. But it really stuck in my mind. I remember thinking, yeah, I'd love to do that, but I'd never be able to do it because I would never be confident enough to do it. And then, yeah, you get older and you get more confident, don't you? And you mature and you start doing things that you never thought that you would be able to do before. And I think, I know it's a bit of a cliche, but after everything that we went through during COVID and everything like that, I just became very focused on, and even a little bit before COVID, I was getting really focused on getting out of my comfort zone and pushing myself to do things. Just reading a lot of, I don't like to say self literature, but maybe self developmental things about the importance of just always striving to push yourself and coming out of your comfort zone. And I did that. I started like swimming in the cold sea, one of those crazy nutters that does that in Brighton. Yeah. And that gave me a lot of confidence and like coping mechanisms with, because you are physically going into the very uncomfortable when you do something like that. And it's about breathing and kind of mindset, mind over matter. And so I think a combination of that and then just me, yeah, wanted to, what's the next thing? What's the next? Sometimes I was like, oh my God, I'm a nightmare to myself. Sometimes I just want to have an easy life and just, it's always, what's next? What's next? And through doing the cold water swimming, I met this girl. She's a woman. And she's a really dear friend of mine now. And we met through doing cold water swimming. Is a stand-up comedian and she's fantastic. She's so good. I think she saw something in me. They do say that you're attracted to people or people attracted to your energy, that when you see something of yourself in that person, they're drawn to you. And I think that's what it was. Like, how we got on so well. And she said to me, I think you'd be good at that. Because I said, oh, I've always thought about that. And do you think? Not sure. Tell me more. How funny am I? Liked me. No, loved me. And then, yeah, she said, I did this course with this woman called Louise. She actually runs Brighton Comedy Course. Free plug for you there, Louise. And it's a great course. And it was just a taster. It was like a little soup song, like a little 3 hour afternoon thing. And she said, why don't you just go to that? Because even the thought of doing full 8-week course was like, oh my God, that's even the thought of going into a room with strangers. That to me in itself was quite intimidating and daunting, especially I thought they'd all be like, jazz hand, look at me. I'm so funny. I'm great. I'm so confident. And that just, it's never really been me, like the essence of how I felt or how I presented. So I did this course and it was only one afternoon. I was very nervous, but we were asked to just stand up and present a little bit about ourselves, try to make it funny. And then we had to do like random exercises, like picking a subject, just say something funny about it for a couple of minutes. I just surprised myself like that I was able to even do that. And then afterwards, she said, "Yeah, I thought that you were quite natural at that," and it just gave me a boost. And I thought, okay, sign me up, sign me up.
Do the 8-week course afterwards.
I did do the 8-week course, yeah, and
Nice.
which was a nightmare to get to give. That took a lot of effort because, as obviously you and I, we were used to work together, didn't we?
Yes.
We were cabin crew. Well, I still am on my sins, and that is really difficult to manage.
It's a pain
Logistic.
to get time off to do something for because 8 weeks isn't really that long, but when you work shifts and you don't really have any control on when you work, it's a challenge.
Exactly. And that's been something that has really frustrated me actually for quite a long time in my personal life. Not necessarily stand-up comedy. I enjoy my job, but I knew that it was never on its own was going to be quite enough to fulfill my kind of that word, your dharma, your absolute being, the reason why you're caught up.
That's why I've left, because it wasn't enough anymore. It's never been enough, to be fair, but it's just that I was ready to run the business and do the
Yeah.
photography full time rather than as a side hustle.
And now look at you flying. Fun is pun, absolutely intended. Yeah, no, you're doing great. And it's great because it is a leap of faith, isn't it? To think this is what I'm doing. This is what I really love. But obviously you've got to think income and financially and things like that to make that leap and just do it and commit to it and be true to yourself. And you've done that. So that's incredible. I envy you, really. Yeah, I think that's brilliant what you've done
Thank
to
you.
do that. Yeah, no. And who knows, one day if I would have the courage to do that. But at the moment, it's a hobby that I really enjoy. We'll see where it leads.
You describe it as a hobby. Do you see yourself as doing that full time?
Potentially, it's very dependent on eventually obviously getting book gigs that you
Yep.
get paid for. And that can take quite a long time. I was always made aware of that when I started out. It can take years. Some people never make it to that professional point. But I think that's something that a lot of people about the pay side of it is that people are very quick to ask me about the pay of it. And when I tell them that I'm doing it, and I'm like, it's not really like that. It's not something that you do to ever make money. You do it to the passion and you hope that you're going to be successful. I think you're very blessed in this life and very lucky in this life if you get your creativity to be exchanged for money. That's for me, that's so powerful to have that,
Yes.
isn't it?
And I feel so humbled every time somebody buys either a print or a t-shirt. I really hope I never get used to it. That feeling of, oh my God, somebody paid for something I've done.
Yeah, and it's something that it's so personal to you that started out as a tiny germ of an idea in your brain that just manifested into existence. It's just, but it's something I talked about making into careers. I've only been going not that long, really, like a year and a half, and that's not. I'm approaching about 100 gigs now.
Already? Wow.
But that's actually nothing in stand-up comedy.
Of course.
But
it's still better than thinking, oh my God, should I do it? Oh, I could never do that. You've already
no,
done 100.
now I'm like that, and I'm like, wow, I can't actually. Who is this person? Sometimes I think I can't believe when you just reinforces that thing about you can actually, you do change. People do change. You can change who you are to a degree, which really reinforces that. But in terms of the career, did get my first ever professionally paid gig this year. And it was
Congratulations.
thank you. And that was very, just like you were saying about when every time you sell a t-shirt and things like that, that did it. It felt very humbling. It felt, I was writing a little invoice. Look at me writing an invoice. It's just a few jokes. Don't get me wrong. It's not like life changing advice, but it was just the symbolism of that was
Yeah.
just really special to me. I was like, wow. And so that's the first step. And then if that progressed and if that was something that was happening on a more regular basis, then an answer to your question, then yeah, it would be something that I would then have to sit down and work out logistically in terms of making it into a career.
In terms of career,
Mm.
who are your role models?
I always find this one a really tricky one to answer because I never feel very current with comedians and comedy and what's cool and who's out there. A lot of my idols in comedy weren't like necessarily all straight stand-ups for a start, like straight stand.
What straight
I
stand-up?
just yeah, not talking as in heterosexual.
No, no, of course.
Oh no, no,
But
sorry.
but still, what's straight stand-up?
Comedy for me began, my first appreciation of comedy that I can remember was things like French and Saunders. Um, Absolutely fabulous. Obviously, they are comedians in their own right, but watching shows like that and these comedy duos and obviously sitcoms as well, killer scenes and jokes and dialogue that just to this day, it was still things that I'll still remember and still say through into the conversation of the joke. It's so many good memories from watching that when I was younger. I think that's what really got me into comedy. So I'd probably start there rather than stand up. But I like really old school campy. I love a lot of them are dead as well. Joan Rivers.
Oh, I was gonna say, I'm sure. Good.
Is
She's one
she a
of
fan
my
of you?
idols. Yes.
Ah, good. Oh, I'm so glad. Yeah. I just love that. I don't know if it's a gay thing. I don't like to generalize, but there is something like kind of caustic putting, things like that. I used to love, I don't think Dame Ed never did stand up, but they did like chat shows and honey bits. I thought that, I guess, it was all very caustic and
Mm.
quite bitchy. So I don't know if that says a lot about me. And the other one that I loved, I absolutely love is Carolyn Ahern.
I don't think I've heard of.
Yeah, if she played the royal family, it was all based up north, northern working class family humor thing. But she was a stand-up comedian as well. But what I really loved her for was a character called Mrs. Mad, which is
That rings a bell.
ring about again, that was not a stand-up thing, but that was a satire of a kind of chat show. She did have guests on, but her thing was she'd ask very leading questions. She'd ask very pointed, sarcastic questions to deliberately get laughs. Like the most famous one, this might be a little cultural thing here, because obviously you're French, aren't you? So you grew up in France, and this is going back quite a while. But are you aware of the comedian Paul Daniels? No, it's a really naff. Well, I just say that because he's not alive anymore either. Bloody hell. But he was great fun. But he's a very kind of like 80s, 90s sort of TV magician. And he had a wife called Debbie McGee. And Debbie McGee was much younger, much more glamorous. He was quite old as a magician and obviously very wealthy because he'd done very well. She was just his assistant. I don't say just because she was part of the act, but she was his assistant. I suppose maybe she played up to the kind of magician's assistant role. I don't know, but so Debbie, the guest, the assistant was a guest on Mrs. Merton's show, and she basically comes out onto the show, and Mrs. Merton, the first thing that she asked her was, "So Debbie, what first attracted you to the millionaire Paul Daniels?" And it was just like the audience just erupted, and it's all things like, and I adopt a little bit of that sometimes into my stand-up. I like that kind of talk it straight safe, but being a bit
Yes.
sarcastic and a bit cutting, but not being. There's a fine line. I don't like to be nasty. No.
Exactly. I was gonna say, in what I saw of you, there is a bit of a sting,
Mm.
but he's never mean. He's never, what's the word? Yeah, he's never bitchy.
No,
He's just funny.
thank you, thank you. I mean, and it's always my biggest worry. I never want to be bitchy at all or mean to anyone
Yeah,
or kind of, just punching low.
exactly. Yeah,
'Cause it's not clever. You can make fun of
yeah,
anyone for anything,
yeah,
but
yeah.
just be funny and have a little bit of rapport with people if you're doing that. And that's what I like, even though I've just cited all these quite like bitchy comedians, but I suppose it depends on the recipient as well and how they take it and how they're able to handle it. Some
Mm.
people can be more sensitive than others as well.
Do you think there is an element of acting in comedy?
Absolutely, 100%. I didn't realize that at first, actually. And it's funny because that's something that I always wanted, again, something that I always wanted to do when I was younger. Right. And for me to be around those people now is crazy to me. Like I'm having conversations with them, we're hanging out before we go on stage or after. And I'm hanging with the kids that like I wanted to be when I was at school, like a person with confidence that can present themselves. And so in answer to your question as well, that there is an element of acting because when I first started, I'd very much go out and tell a few jokes. Obviously there was more nerves, there was less confidence. And I've still got a way to go. Obviously, I'm not talking from a position of being very seasoned, and I've still got lots of learning to do. And I'm developing, improving every day, every gig that I do. But I definitely I've noticed now, even like just last night, I did a gig, and I felt more and more. And it's not that I'm not being genuine or being true to myself, but I've always say this. It's like an out it's like the nerves before it and then the adrenaline. And then before you know it, you're just there doing it. And you're like, okay, I'm here. And I feel like I'm floating above my body, looking down on myself,
Mm.
thinking, I've realized that there's some jokes that just won't land as well unless you really act it, you really sell it, like you go the full mile, like past the finish line. Like it's not enough just to tell it straight. You have to get into some kind of persona with it. And I do. As a gay man as well, there is an element, I don't think it's deliberate, but I do it and I notice I do it, is that I do camp it up a bit as well.
That was my next question. How does your experience as a gay man influence your comedy?
God, that's a huge question. It influences it a lot in so many different ways. I don't want to be labeled and only known as the gay comedian. It's my reality. It's shaped my bringing, my experience as a child, my experience at school, my experience in life. So of course that's going to influence and impact any anecdotal kind of joke that I might tell about something. It's going to be from the point of view of a gay person. Just as, yeah, I do make a couple of little cheap gay jokes in there as well. You've got to have some of them just to can't all be like serious. But yeah, it definitely is not just in terms of content, but also just from how I've felt in terms of confidence wise, how I present myself and how I still feel about myself, even now, I'd never want to come across as talking as if I'm like really seasoned because I'm not. But from where I am now, I still like to make that point is that I still to this day, sometimes quite a lot, have that feeling of, oh, is there going to be things that are not going to like me because I'm gay? Growing up gay is associated with so much shame. It's something to be ashamed of, to be not spoken about, to be ridiculed. And that shapes us. That's early childhood trauma, isn't it? And that shapes us in our thought processes and our kind of not even just from a stand-up point of view, but from just daily life point of view, that the kind of when you're out and about, you're scanning the scene. Is anyone looking at me? Is anyone judging me because of how I look, how I act, blah, 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 to vulnerabilize yourself in that way, to actually go on stage and go, yeah, I'm going to get up here and be like gay and actually probably be even more gay than I normally am. And so that has had a huge influence on my stand-up.
You mentioned a few minutes ago feeling nervous, if I
Mhm.
understood correctly, about being seen as a gay man.
Yeah.
So how do you overcome that every night?
Good question. I feel like I said, like there's an element of me that is just, it is autopilot as well. Like you get the adrenaline. That's great actually, because that gets you through things. I suppose it's like your body's natural kind of fight or flight thing. So I choose to fight. I get up there. I don't run out the door. I do it and I get up and then it's fine. Like I said, it's like an out of body experience. And once it's really important to get that first laugh, to get a
Yeah.
first good laugh. And once you get that laugh, not only have you got that gives you the fire and the confidence to continue in a confident way, which is really important, but it also gives the audience confidence in you. And it's really important. That's really important because I think people generally want to find you funny. They want to laugh. People don't want to see people get up on stage in front of them and fail and flout. And I think once you get those first couple laughs and you relax, the audience relax, think, okay, he's all right. He's got, then inevitably there are jokes further down the line within your set that aren't maybe your strongest. They don't land as well. It's not going to be the be all and end all. It's not going to make or break that overall experience because people know, yeah, you got this. We're just with them on a journey. And it also, it can't always be like laugh. There's got to be like the peaks and troughs as well. So light and shade, isn't it? You have to have the light and shade. It can't just be constant hours every time. You've got to, you take them on a little journey with you. And as long as they feel that they're in capable hands and you've got that connection. And if you can interact a bit as well.
In your opinion, what's the difference between a drag show and stand-up comedy?
For me, that I find it fascinating. Like when I first started doing it, I was really surprised to know within the Brighton area, I could count really on one hand the amount of gay male anyway, and comedians that are on the circuit. And I was really surprised by that, to be honest, especially somewhere in Brighton that is obviously very accepting and safe space for a community. I do feel that with a lot of gay men, there is that, like I spoke of, that vulnerability, that shame, that fear to present yourself in such a stripped back, bare way. And in my opinion, I do think that stand-up comedy is one of the most vulnerabilizing sort of things that you can
Definitely.
do. And, you're standing up there in front of people like, I'm here, I'm telling you that I'm going to be funny and I'm going to make you laugh. It's a big thing to be so vulnerable. It's very scary. And I think because obviously a lot of drag queens are gay men and we come from that same background, that upbringing, that sort of shame, that kind of trauma and all that. And I think and it's been spoken about widely, and I love drag queens, but especially through the RuPaul's Drag Race culture, it's become very mainstream. So it's been widely discussed about how a lot of them do feel like they're putting on a different personality. I don't want to say hiding behind for some, because that kind of negative connotations as if they're trying to hide, but it's definitely something that maybe I'd like to say empowers them to be on stage and to present themselves, to present their emotion, their dance that they
Yeah.
specialize in as drag queens, because obviously it's a hugely diverse range of skills being a drag queen. I love drag queens. So in that way, I'd say it's very different, but in some ways it's very similar. Not all drag queens are comedians anyway, aren't they not?
No,
But some do specialize in the more the singing or the bit more audience interaction.
the ones I was referring to were
Mm,
the ones who actually tell jokes. So
right.
like the funny drag shows and
Yeah.
you as a stand-up comedian. Do you
Yeah.
think the difference is only one is in a dress and the other isn't?
It's another artistic skill set in
Right.
itself. It is its own art form. I wouldn't necessarily compare so directly like that. We all like to camp up and dress up and we're gay, put on the makeup and do all that. But yet to that degree, that level of commitment and skill and talent is incredible. It's just not something that I'm personally drawn to or interested in. So yeah, I think it's passion, it's interest, what you want to do, what you're interested in.
Yeah.
If you, it's not
Definitely.
my thing. And also it can be part of someone's as well to be that can be part of the content, part of the dialogue, part of the jokes, the set is the fact that they are a drag queen and it's things that can be around that.
The other thing I was thinking was that as a stand-up comedian,
Mm.
I guess you write your own jokes.
Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, 100.
For example, if I sorry to compare again, but if
No,
comparing that to an actor or a theater comedian, then not that they hide, but it's someone else's words.
yeah.
But then these are your words. That makes the whole thing even more vulnerable.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I think there's a lot. I have spoken to some people that have come from acting backgrounds that have told me directly that they do find stand up so much harder and so much, but much scarier than straight acting because, yeah, just for that exact reason, it is your own words, it's your own thoughts, your own creative, your own ideas, and if that doesn't go well you can take that so personally, and it can be really devastating if it doesn't. But then the flip side is that when it does come off and you have a great reaction, a great gig, and your jokes do land, thank God, like we said earlier, I did that. That came out of my head. Don't care about money. It to get laughs is like amazing, and you're on this high, and it's
Yeah.
incredible.
Do you think being an openly gay man or a gay comedian,
Mm.
do you think that that might curb your appeal to a wider audience?
I, interesting question. I don't think so. Like, I don't just off the top of my head, I don't think so. I think that there's very different reactions, especially when they're made up of predominantly straight people. Interestingly, this is something that I've really explored this year because I'd never performed to any LGBTQ, I can't remember what if all all the letters audience before. I was really nervous about performing to a gay audience actually, because I'd only ever performed to a straight audience. Mm, Remember, even if I could, because sometimes when you're watching the audience, if you're in the audience, if you're at the back of the room and you're looking at people, like, even if I'd seen like there might be one or two gay people, I suddenly go, "Oh my god, there's gay people! Oh my god, what are they going to say about it?" Because do you not think there is this thing that we as gay people, we always think that we're going to be really mean to each other, or is that just me?
Actually, I don't see that as gay people are going to be mean to me. I think it's just that I want them to like me even more
Yeah,
than the other ones.
yeah,
So I'm putting the pressure on myself
that's exactly it.
because I'm interacting with my tribe, so to say.
That's it, isn't it? You want to fit in and
I
you're
want to be accepted.
that's literally what biologically makes us function as human beings, going back to even things like being a baby and you cry because you want your mum to feed you. You want this things like that or acceptance from community are just as vital as tangible resources, your food and shelter and things like that. Less scary than before. Funnily enough, after what I'd said before, less scary than Australia is because you have to change a little bit, change up your material a little bit or adapt it slightly. When I perform to a straight audience, it does sometimes feel a bit like being the court jester, a bit like clowning a little bit as the gay man, the essence of I'm gay and it's so funny that I'm gay. That's not really going to work for a gay audience. You don't want to patronize your own people.
No.
I know you're gay. I know you're gay. It's more about maybe being like relatable.
Yeah, it's more maybe make jokes about the shared experience.
Yeah, it's like with you and I don't know if you ever did you ever see Pan Am?
Yeah, of course. Yes.
Yeah, the neighbor that doesn't know, the comedian that does jokes about being cabin crew and working for an airline and all that, and other airlines that she's not herself. But it's that I think probably you and I would have found that far funnier than people that aren't flight attendants because it's relatable. Because we're like, you're not telling me about my job. I know about my job, but you're saying things that, oh yeah, because I know. Oh yeah, I know when that happens. Yeah, that's funny when that happens. You know.
Yeah.
So that's what I try to be with a gay audience. Less that than, hey, I'm gay. I'm a straight people. I do feel in some ways it is enough just to like almost come out and camp it up a bit sometimes, but not always.
Have you been able to adapt to the audience?
Yeah, as in terms of straight or gay. Yeah. Yeah. So I've done probably this year, I've done a handful of just pure LGBT gigs. In fact, what's fantastic is that there's the UK's first ever LGBTQI permanent club in London, which there never was before. I still think proportionally, compared to the population of London, how many comedians, it's crazy how few like gay comedians there are. Not as obvious as in Brighton. But yeah, that club, for example, performing there and I did a few other great gay nights outside of Brighton. And I did feel like I really had to go through it and be like, is this relatable or is this patronizing? I feel like I have done that. And my biggest fear was I would go on it, be like, yeah, we know what Grinder is. I came out as well. Yeah. But the difference is we can have a different slant on that, a different take on that.
Yeah. Maybe if not the actual coming out, that's funny. The coming out is maybe just the context to tell a joke.
Now it's a bit of a cliche. The best humor, the best comedy, the funniest things come from the absolute truth, like things that did actually happen. My best things are, I always think goes down the best anyway, are the things that are true to me that really happened. Some of the best things I've come up with, when I say the best, is like the things that go down well consistently. You get a consistently strong laugh joke. Maybe there's something that needs a little bit more of an extra setup before, so that people can get the context. Like I said earlier about a joke I do about my hometown, I always have to set it up first to explain that Paisley is a very rough and very dangerous town. If I didn't say that, then the rest of it wouldn't work. You have to then take that out on the road, take it to open mic nights, and try each joke, and not just once, because once might be like a fluke, It might bomb and that might be a fluke. It might actually be quite good and you have to just do it a few times. It's, yeah, keeping track of the jokes that you've written, how many times you've performed them, what kind of laughs. Like I like to try and rate them out of 10 or out of 5. Was that like a complete bomb or was that like one of those laughs that it fills the room and it carries on for a bit without you even saying anything? Or is it like just like kind of polite giggle or anywhere in that scale? So I have to know to get material. And so to get all that material together, that I had to take myself away and sit because God, you remember like our life as crew and stuff and flying and stuff and life anyway, not just crew. The most organic ways it just comes to you. It's
Yeah.
sitting down and going, I need to be funny. What's funny? What can I write about? And it something that you think can be really funny and you're convinced and then you tell it and no one laughs.
How do you deal with that?
Better now after being heavily medicated. No, I'm only joking. I just move on. I think acknowledge it is really important. Acknowledge it. You need to acknowledge, like, oh, just straight face to move on to the next. And also
Mm.
I've learned as well, don't look annoyed that no one laughed. Don't look pissed off.
Do you look hurt?
I think I probably used to, like kind of deer in the headlights, like sort of Bambi. I'll make a silly comment, but you can make that into a joke in itself. I think if people know it's an open mic night where you're actually testing out new material anyway, then they know the premise of the night. So I'll set it up by telling some anchors, as we call them, ones that you've got in the bank that are always a hit. So start off with that. So that they say, I've got this, all right. Normally I can do this. And then I'm going to just do a couple that I'm not sure about and you can let me know. So then if it doesn't, then it's okay. So then you can be like, oh, right. If you've got you can be a bit dramatic. If you've got I usually have a notebook and a pen on stage about if I'm doing new material, not if I'm doing a proper
Mm.
gig. If I'm doing new material, then I'll just be like, that's going in the bin and just score it. It's not
Oh
clever.
yeah.
It's not intelligent. It's just silly and people will laugh at that.
It doesn't have to be all the time super clever. It's
No, and
just
actually, I think that's why some people like going to open mic now, because I think they're quite interested and fascinated in the process of this is how people put a set together and this is how people make jokes. And this is part of the process. It's like behind the scenes almost kind of thing. So yeah, it's fine. You get used to it. I'm fine, but I still get very nervous about doing new material though. I do. But it's like, I'm thrilled nervousness. It's like I'm
mm.
excited because I'm like, because you get bored doing the same material over and over
Oh
again.
yeah.
You get
Yes.
so bored, even though it works, but you still get bored. Sometimes it's hard. You have to make an effort to not sound like you're just rhyming it off, trotting it out.
Well, it becomes your comfort zone,
It becomes
as we were
again
talking about earlier.
exactly that. And
So you mentioned a few LGBTQ comedians.
yes,
And do you think, as a group, these comedians can advocate for LGBTQ rights or representation?
I think so. Yeah, definitely. There's a platform there. I think that no one. Do you mean on stage or do you mean?
So what I'm trying to say is that, in my opinion, the best way to change the world is for us to communicate and
Mhm.
just talk to each other.
Yeah.
And I think when in in that context of making people laugh, I really think that's the best way really to change the world. Like, for example, even 20, 30 years ago,
Yeah.
when homophobia was even more than it is now,
Yeah.
there were LGBTQ people on TV.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They were massive, and everyone. I don't know.
Everybody
Maybe not.
knew.
Yeah, that's what I'm gonna say. Everybody, maybe not everybody, because there are people that are just like so blinkered about things, aren't they? But yeah, it was obvious. They get and being very like overtly cast. Again,
Yeah, yeah,
whether that
yeah.
was a lot that was put on just to play up to something that people expected of people, because there is an expectation as well that
Mm.
we can only exist if we are a certain way. But I would never want to go up and start lecturing somebody or patronizing somebody about
Abs-
something. So I think that it is a great way because it's a way to highlight subject, to bring straight people who have got no real knowledge or insight into our lives and what we're about and what makes us tick, bring them into our worlds in a very real way and just connect with them. Be like, we're just like you, really. We've just got different words for things. We just do things slightly different. We talk in a different way. We like certain things.
If we do things differently,
Yeah.
So what?
Exact,
We can laugh about.
of course, we can laugh about it 100%. I find it fascinating, and it's not something that I really thought about until I started doing comedy. And actually, it goes back to a question that you asked me earlier about adapting your set to people. Because there's this one joke I do, I can't use it with a straight audience because they just don't know the terminology, and that it's just a
Right.
simple word that you know. I do this joke about how I'm basically a retired twink or something like that. And that works well in a gay audience because they can appreciate that, because you've got gay men that are getting older, and there is that whole thing of, what are you after you stop being a twink? And that's quite relatable to us. It's quite funny, I think, to discuss that whole subject about, I still find it. But straight people, they don't know what the word means or what it even is, and they don't have that thing about tribes. We like tribes, don't we? The tribes.
Yep. Yeah, it's true. Actually, I never thought about that. I don't think there are that many tribes for straight people.
Like you said, it's a great platform just to make us a bit more relatable. And here I am, I'm talking to, I'm engaging to you. You can find me funny. You can find out a bit about my life, what I went through, and make a joke about things that were probably quite traumatic to me.
We can all experience. For example, we were talking earlier about that need to be accepted, that need to belong. We all have that.
Need to be loved. I always say need to be liked, and I think, no, it's loved. Love me. Yeah, and that's probably like a lot of the reason as well why a lot of stand-up comedians do it, because it is that you want to be appreciated, liked, loved. Yeah.
Are you aware that maybe your comedy might have helped somebody to deal with a difficult time or something like that in their lives?
Oh,
Have
God.
you had already that kind of feedback?
Somebody that had actually it was a gay man, they had seen me do a gig and they thought about doing it for a while, and maybe just gave them the idea that maybe it was something that they could do as well.
No?
If he can do it, I can bloody do it. Oh,
You
that
know,
was nice.
what kind of advice would you give to somebody who would like to get up on stage?
Just do it. Life's too short. My thing is now, don't not do something because you're afraid. Don't ever let like fear be the thing that stops
Yeah.
you from doing something, because you'd never do anything then. You make the most of your time, because it's just, I'm getting, as the older we get, it's actually depressing, but I'm becoming aware it feels really short and precious. And don't ever look back that, oh, I wish I'd done something. And what have you got to lose at the end of the day? If you get up, no one laughs and you don't enjoy it, no one died. You go home, you
And
thank the laugh. It's
you
not
know
for
that's
you.
your thing. Yeah.
You've
And you
tried
can
it,
try again. And you can try again if you want, whatever. But
and
it's
it
not the
might
end of the world.
it's not the end of the world. That's it. I think, and you can apply that to so many things in life, really, can't you? We get so in our head about, oh,
Yes.
if I can't do this, if I don't do this, if this doesn't work out, then you think we just stop for a minute and break it down and rationalize. Like, actually, life moves on. There will be another day tomorrow, and yeah, it's not the
Yeah.
end of the world.
What's next for David?
What's next? Oh, wow. Well, I'm flying to New York tomorrow. That's what's next. But no,
To get more material.
yeah, no, I don't hear that much actually, to be honest. I talk about it in quite a general way, actually. That side of it. Obviously, there's little anecdotes, but no. Next, I started running my own night along with a fantastic comedian called Ben Carter, and he runs a night on every third Friday of the month called Freak of Nature. So I've started running that with him. So sometimes I'll be emceeing the night if I'm around. So that's quite exciting. I've done a few gigs emceeing now, which has been really exciting. It feels like it's a new kind of skill set, and it gives you a lot more stage time and chance to interact with the audience and become a bit more loose and a bit more fluid, get more confidence. So that's been really great. So I want to do a lot more of that. And I want to enter a couple more competitions as well, get a little title, a little accolade for doing something would be nice. And yeah, just keep doing it and just keep challenging myself and improving and learning from people and enjoying it, having fun.
I was going to say, yeah, that's the most important.
And I did get
Yeah.
to a point at the beginning where I was very trying to do way, way more than I was really able to do, because I was doing that and making myself tired. And that's to the point where I started thinking, you know what, this isn't making me not enjoy it anymore. And I would hate that to happen, because it's all very well being ambitious and being driven, but sometimes it can take away from the enjoyment and the fun of things. So I think just to be kinder to myself as well, and just to learn when to sometimes say, do you know what? No, I need a break. I'm just going to enjoy
Yeah.
life as well.
You can still be ambitious and driven, be kind to yourself and enjoy what you're doing.
Absolutely. I think there's a lot of shame about being ambitious and being driven. There is a
Yeah.
lot of kind of people you seem to be like ruthless and I would never want to be seen in that way, but I just a healthy desire to like to keep doing what I'm doing and get better at it, but also have a healthy balance of like, my personal life and yeah, having fun, enjoying life.
It's a privilege these days to enjoy life.
Absolutely. Especially after all we've been through the last few years.
Where can people find you?
Where? Oh, try not to say something
Where
sarcastic.
can they not find you?
I'm very stupid, but I won't. I on Instagram, memoirs of a gay. See what I did there? Yeah, I'm usually gigging in Brighton. I do London. I try to London a couple of times a month, but it is quite a slog. Go up to London, these gigs go on very late, but it's great to have that different kind of there's a different London vibe. So I
Yeah.
like to mix it up. I've got this gig the third Friday of every month, and it's called Freak of Nature, and it's usually about eight eight acts from around Brighton, the south coast, in London, doing it's usually about 10 minutes each. I'm usually either myself or my pal Ben Carter will be emceeing it, and it's just people that we've known and that we've gigged with or that we've heard good things about that are really good comedians, and it's only £6, which is a bargain on a Friday night. So yeah, that's my kind of main thing that I'm focusing on at the moment, and you can find me there. And not this month because I'm not going to be there for work because of work.
There are bills to pay.
Sadly, there are still, yeah, bills to pay. They're getting
That's
more.
what happens when you're no longer a twink. The bills.
You have to pay you have to pay you have to pay for the drinks.
That I know. See,
That's what you become. You become a daddy. That's what you become. No, that's not me. That's not who I am. I can't deal with that when people suggest that now after you get to certain age, then in the gay world, you're known as a dad. It's only a little bit. It just doesn't quite sit right with me. I don't know what you think about that.
yeah, no, I'm rarely called a daddy. I don't see myself as one either. So that's quite,
No.
quite fitting.
We can be whatever we want at any age.
I think so. I think so. I've never seen myself as a twin. I don't see myself as a daddy. So yeah, we are who we are.
We are who we are. I might still call myself a twink then.
I just have a little final question for you.
Yeah.
What's your idea of embracing who you are?
Uh, for a long time, I would have probably said, "Oh, loving yourself," and all that. I think that's so much pressure. I didn't realize for a long time that's really putting yourself under so much pressure. You must love yourself. You must love it because I don't always love myself. I'm an absolute nightmare. A lot of the time, I'm in my head all the time. Takes me an hour to even function in the morning. I think for me, it's to know that you're enough, right? You're not always going to be perfect. And I'm far from having it sussed, by the way. But this is the thing that I like to try and tell myself is to just to know that I'm enough. And when I do fuck up, I think that's the first time I swear. I was worried that I was going to be swearing the whole time, and I haven't really. But when I do fuck up, is rather than that, I think we have this autopilot, don't we, as human beings, that we go straight to the saboteur, straight to the self-flagellation, straight to, yeah, you would fuck up. It was yesterday, very short story, but I left my AirPods on a flight. Disaster. Found them again. The first thing I did was, oh, fucking I hate myself. Hate myself for doing that. I thought, whoa, no, we need to be careful about how we speak to ourselves. And when we do fuck up and do things a bit less trivial than losing your AirPods, but other things in life, is just to take your hand off that autopilot that it's always on. That we're conditioned to have it on that self-flagellation autopilot of you're shit, you're terrible, you don't deserve that anyway. It's that horrible little voice in it, and that just to be aware of it
Yeah.
and to say, do you know, I hear you, but I'm gonna go that way actually, and I'm just gonna say, do you know what, actually, David, you were quite busy yesterday. You were quite stressed. You had a lot on your mind. You weren't paying attention to what you were doing, and it's fine. It happened. It'll happen again at some point. Don't beat yourself up about it. So it's being kinder to yourself as well. That's a big one, actually.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so
I've
much
really
for being on
enjoyed
it.
it.
I really enjoyed it too. It's been an absolute pleasure. And yeah, I hope to see you soon.
Yeah, I will come and heckle.
Heckling, throw rotten fruit at the stage. Yeah.
All right. So thank you so much. And thanks everybody for listening, watching. Please share, comment, and send some love, spread some love. We need it. Thanks,
Mwah.
David.
Thank
Bye
you.
bye. Bye
Bye.
bye.
Bye.